Ciao, io sono Gaetano Grossi e oggi facciamo il jaffle alla bolognese. Spero che ti piace, buon appetito! Buonissimo! Hi, I'm Guy Grossi. Today I'm going to be doing my Bolognese jaffle. Everyone has a version of Bolognese, or Bolognese as we refer to it here in Victoria. This is my version, the version I grew up with that my mother lovingly cooked for me when I was a boy. So I hope you enjoy it. First, we're going to make the Bolognese. So Bolognese is one of those sauces or dishes, ragu alla Bolognese, which has developed over time in many different guises, and there's a lot of controversy about what should be the real Bolognese. And just like every other good Italian family, we have our own version, the version that my mum fed us while I was growing up. So I start off with a bit of onion. I love to finely chop the onion in one go rather than sort of start smashing it away like that at the end, because onion carries a lot of natural, beautiful sugars and juices in them. So if you can retain them in the onion rather than squishing them out onto the chopping board, that's really important. In the meantime, I'm going to get my pot warming up over here and use a little olive oil in the base of that. I love a good Aussie fresh olive oil. Get all those lovely onions into there. We'll just get that starting to sizzle away. In the meantime, I can get my garlic chopped. Now, in my study of the elusive Bolognese, I've found if you go back far enough, Pellegrino Artusi, the famous chef of the 1800s, Italian chef, he had versions in there where it's actually finished off with, there's a pancetta in there, the other vegetables like carrots and celery, and in some versions you'll find that it's finished off with a little milk as well. Garlic can go in, and I'm really starting to get that nice sizzle and caramelization on those onions. I like a little bit of chili in there. I have some lovely fresh parsley here and some beautiful fresh sage as well. Just give it a little chop. We are actually putting it into the jaffle, so I'm going to reduce it a lot more than what I normally would if I was using it as a pasta sauce, so that it really, really thickens up nicely. That onion is just starting to caramelize really nicely in there. The sandwich culture in Italy, though, is very strong, I've got to tell you. And I've had quite a few over there. The tramezzini from the north in those beautiful osterias. In fact, Ombra has a beautiful sandwich that we do called the pezzo, which is our pizza dough cooked into a bun and then cut in half and filled with all the lovely fillings that we do. We don't, as Italians, like to put sugar into our cooking. We get that from the base, from the soffritto, from the onions that are caramelizing really beautifully there. Now, there's also different schools of thought on what sort of meat goes into the Bolognese. Well, I like this combination of the minced beef and the minced pork over here as well. And the reason I do that is because it adds richness to the dish. It also adds depth of flavor. That pork and the fattiness of the pork and the flavor of the pork really gives it that richness. And if Mama was here, she would just say that's the way we've always done it. Let's have a look. The meat goes in there and you keep that heat fairly vigorous because that meat is going to cool down your pot quite considerably. But at first, a lot of liquid will come out of that meat. Don't panic, it doesn't matter, because that will dry up and eventually start to caramelize and cook that meat really nicely. Now, this is where people go wrong with a good Bolognese. It's got to be caramelized. That meat has to have flavor on it, because if you just leave it white, it'll be insipid. It'll never get that lovely depth of flavor that comes from the long cooking. Now, the next part of our flavor is our spices that we add to our ragu. So I've got in here just a couple of whole cloves. Smashing cloves and spices fresh, it really does make a difference. So I'm just going to grab a pinch of that. You can't go too heavy. It's only a small amount that we're making because it will take over. And the other spice I really love to put in there is nutmeg. I'm going to put about half one of those in this recipe. And then we just continue to let that sizzle away nicely till we develop that wonderful flavour that we're talking about. I love a good sandwich too. Like, I guess it's in our culture as Aussies, you know, we grew up with sandwiches, going to school. I remember school lunches were something we really looked forward to. When Mum would come running up the road with a freshly made homemade burger that was still warm with her onions all sizzled up in there and everything. Always a highlight of the school week. We're gonna add some salt. I like adding salt nice and early to my sauces and stocks so it gives them time to really develop and get that flavour going through it. Some cracked pepper. And then our tomato paste. Well, I don't put fresh tomatoes in there or canned tomatoes. I put tomato paste. It's a concentrato. This is a tripolo concentrato. A couple of nice generous spoons of that. And at this point, I like to give that a little saute as well. I think it's nice that the tomato paste gets a little cook in the bottom of the pot, toasts it up a little bit. Okay, now we're ready for our red wine. Let simmer away for a few minutes, doesn't take long, it's only a small amount. And then we can add our liquid. In this case, I'm using water, and the reason why is that it's fresh and it's pure and it doesn't alter flavors. It's just helping develop the flavors that are in there from the meats that you've chosen. So that's gonna come up to the boil now, and once it comes up to the boil, I'm gonna turn that down really gently and let it cook for a long time. It's gotta be over an hour for sure, but it can be longer, and this one will go longer because, as I said before, we're gonna really reduce it down. And here's one I made yesterday, and you can see that's really gone thick. It's reduced really well, and it looks so flavoursome and delicious, and it is, because I've tasted it. Let's make these babies some butter. This is where some people can go wrong with jaffles. They're not generous enough with the butter. I'm not French, but I can say it. Butter makes everything taste better. Making sandwiches, it's like cooking anything else, and I think sometimes people fall into this little hole where they go, oh, it's just a sandwich. Well, it can be just a sandwich, and it can be a good sandwich, but a great sandwich means using the right ingredients, using the right bread for different sandwiches, and just that care, that little special care. You know, if you're cooking a sandwich, you cook it like you would be cooking your most famous dish, you know, and that makes a big difference, I'd say. Now, you've got to try and be generous, but at the same time, there's that fine line where it's too much, because then you start to lose your bolognese. So I'd like to get as much as I can in there, but still keep it safe. So then we just seal our jaffles down and wait for the magic to happen. Unsliced. Butter, of course. Brown, obviously. Always straight down the middle. Crust on. Who takes their crusts off? Crunchy. I like a bit of bump in the road. Vegemite, of course, I'm an Aussie. Reuben. I'm definitely a BT and bacon and lettuce and tomato guy. I can't answer that. Focaccia, ciabatta, it depends. I do love the bagels from Mile End. They're fantastic there. It's a tapestry of things like great produce, great theatre, great sport, passionate people, great coffee, and they all go together to form the Victorian sandwich. So now I'm going to very carefully remove them, carefully being the operative word here. Just to top things off, we get some grana padano, which is beautiful Parmigiano, and go on, be generous. Let's taste it. Very hot but delicious. So remember, good ingredients, really good beef in your bolognese, and a lot of love, and you will have a winner every time. I'm Guy Grossi. This is my Bolognese jaffle. Head to Victoria Together for other great celebrity sandwiches. Buon appetito.